What happens when the world's most famous couple, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, decides to show up somewhere they weren't invited, and thousands of fans make it crystal clear they don't want them there? Imagine the tension. Imagine the chaos. Imagine the deafening boos echoing through an entire stadium. That's exactly what happened at the Los Angeles Dodgers game, an event that was supposed to be just another ordinary night for baseball fans, but instead turned into an unforgettable clash of celebrity, royalty, and public outrage. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. From the moment news broke that Harry and Meghan would be attending, whispers began to spread. Social media lit up with speculation. Who had invited them? Why were they there? And why, of all places, would they choose a Dodgers game to appear unannounced, right in the heart of Los Angeles, where fans aren't known for holding back their opinions? The stage was set for a storm, and no one, not even the security teams or the Dodgers organization, was prepared for the spectacle that would unfold. The anticipation alone was almost unbearable, a mix of excitement and dread. Everyone knew something dramatic was about to happen, but no one could predict the scale of it. It all began in the early evening. The stadium lights flickered on, the crowd murmured with anticipation, and somewhere in the midst of it all, a pair of high-profile figures made their way through the gates. Security personnel flanked them, trying to maintain order, but there was a visible tension. Fans immediately spotted the royals, and the reactions were instantaneous. A ripple of surprise ran through the stands, followed quickly by jeers and boos. At first, it seemed like disbelief, maybe a trick of the eye, but then the recognition sank in. The Duchess of Sussex's eyes darted across the crowd, scanning, measuring, reacting. Prince Harry followed closely, a composed but visibly tense figure, his jaw clenched. They weren't expecting the level of hostility that greeted them. This was not Hollywood glamour. This was raw, unfiltered public sentiment, a tidal wave of emotion that no royal entourage could have easily contained. But why did this happen? Why would thousands of fans, many of whom had no personal connection to the royals, suddenly erupt in disapproval? The answer lies partly in celebrity culture, partly in public frustration, and partly in the narrative that surrounds these two figures. Harry and Meghan are no strangers to controversy. Every public appearance, every word spoken, every outfit chosen seems to ignite intense scrutiny. The question isn't just whether they are liked or disliked. It's whether they can control the narrative. And on this night, they could not. For the first time, the arena itself became a stage for public judgment, where every reaction, every chant, every camera flash contributed to a growing storm of scrutiny. It was a night that would be remembered, not just by fans in the stadium, but by millions across the world watching clips, tweeting reactions, and analyzing every frame. As they walked toward their seats, the boos grew louder. The atmosphere was electric with tension. Some fans waved signs expressing their disdain, others shouted directly at the royal couple. The situation became increasingly chaotic, with security personnel trying desperately to maintain a buffer. In the midst of all this, the couple's own reactions were revealing. Meghan's usual poised demeanor cracked slightly as she leaned toward Harry, whispering something that went unheard by the crowd but hinted at concern, frustration, or perhaps a plan. Harry, for his part, seemed to oscillate between calm restraint and visible discomfort, his eyes scanning for both allies and threats. Every step they took toward their seats amplified the spectacle. This wasn't just a public appearance. It was a crucible, testing the limits of celebrity tolerance, human patience, and the concept of privacy in the age of social media. And yet, what makes this story even more gripping is not just the immediate chaos. It's what came before and what came after. Consider the weeks leading up to this moment. There had been murmurs about their plans in Los Angeles, rumors of private meetings, surprise appearances, and unconfirmed social events. The couple had been spotted around the city, often accompanied by high-profile friends, their movements constantly scrutinized by paparazzi and fans alike. Every sighting added fuel to the curiosity fire. But no one expected them to crash a baseball game, a sporting event, an emblem of community and entertainment, and be met with outright hostility. The irony was palpable. A moment meant for fun, camaraderie, and cheering for one's favorite team became a stage for confrontation, judgment, and spectacle. Social media played its part in magnifying the incident. Clips of the royal couple walking through the stadium went viral within minutes. Fans posted reactions ranging from shock to amusement, and within hours, hashtags dedicated to the incident were trending worldwide. Some applauded the Dodgers fans for holding their ground. Others criticized the Royals for overstepping boundaries and ignoring the implicit rules of public appearances. Memes were created, commentators weighed in, and the narrative shifted from a simple, uninvited appearance to a full-blown cultural moment, analyzed from angles of privilege, celebrity entitlement, and public accountability. The story wasn't just about Harry and Meghan anymore. It became about societal expectations, entitlement, and the ever-thin line between admiration and resentment. The unfolding drama also included voices from the stadium itself. Vendors, ushers, and security staff who had witnessed the entire spectacle shared their perspectives later. One vendor, speaking under the condition of anonymity, described the scene with a mix of amusement and disbelief. "I've worked here for 20 years, and I've never seen anything like it. People were booing, yelling, even throwing soft drinks in the air, not at them, thankfully, but just expressing themselves. The energy was unreal." These first-hand accounts added layers to the story, revealing that this was not just a celebrity mishap, but a moment that exposed the unpredictable volatility of public gatherings. Fans weren't merely reacting, they were performing, asserting their voices, and, in a sense, reclaiming the stadium as their own space, reminding the couple that celebrity status does not equate to universal acceptance. And yet, amidst the chaos, a strange duality emerged. Some fans cheered quietly, captured glimpses of the royals with fascination, and even documented the event for posterity. Others were irreverent, mocking gestures, snapping photos, and shouting commentary that bordered on ridicule. This spectrum of reactions highlighted the complexity of modern fame. Admiration and disdain often coexist in the same space, feeding off each other, intensifying the emotional landscape. How would anyone, no matter how accustomed to the spotlight, navigate such unpredictability? What choices would Harry and Meghan make under this unrelenting scrutiny? Would they retreat, confront, or attempt to charm their way through? The questions hung in the air as palpable as the buzz from the stadium lights and the murmurs of anticipation from tens of thousands of spectators. The stakes weren't just emotional, they were symbolic. Harry and Meghan's uninvited appearance was a flashpoint, reflecting broader tensions between celebrity culture, public perception, and the pressures of royal life. Each boo, each heckle, each moment of surprise became a microcosm of the scrutiny they faced daily. In many ways, the Dodgers Stadium became a theater of modern celebrity, a place where fame collided with reality in a way that was immediate, visceral, and unignorable. Every fan reaction, captured on video, contributed to an evolving narrative that would dominate headlines and social media feeds for days, weeks, and even months afterward. And just as the couple reached their seats, ready to witness the game, a sudden incident ignited the crowd into even greater frenzy. Someone in the stands shouted a phrase that was caught on live cameras, instantly becoming the most replayed clip of the night. Security personnel tensed, Harry's posture stiffened, and Meghan's expression hardened. The tension, which had been simmering, now boiled over. What had begun as murmurs and whispered reactions escalated into a spectacle that no one could ignore. Every camera angle, every fan reaction, every social media post compounded the chaos. It was the kind of moment that could only exist in the collision of fame, sports fandom, and human unpredictability, a perfect storm for public scrutiny, drama, and viral attention. By now, millions of people were watching, both in the stadium and online. News networks picked up clips within minutes. Fans were dissecting every reaction, and royal watchers speculated endlessly. The story had taken on a life of its own, evolving beyond a simple, uninvited appearance into a global conversation about entitlement, privacy, and public accountability. But what truly made this night unforgettable wasn't just the immediate chaos. It was what happened next. Behind the stadium walls, in corridors, in hidden vantage points, and in the hands of fans with phones recording every angle, events unfolded that no one expected. The couple's next moves, the reactions of security personnel, and the viral aftermath would soon collide to create a scandal that left everyone asking, How did it all spiral so far, so fast? What came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. The first sighting of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle at Dodger Stadium was something fans, and even stadium staff, would never forget. Imagine a quiet, predictable night for baseball. The smell of hot dogs and popcorn, the sound of the bat striking a ball, the chants of devoted fans echoing through the stands. And then, suddenly, a ripple of shock cuts through the crowd. Eyes widen, phones lift, whispers turn into murmurs, murmurs turn into shouts. Because there they are, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, walking unannounced into the stadium, flanked by security, clearly expecting a warm reception. Instead, they were met with something far more potent than surprise: outright chaos. It started almost imperceptibly. A few fans in the front rows turned their heads, pointed, and whispered to their neighbors. "Is that them?" one asked. "No way," another responded. But the realization spread like wildfire. Phones emerged from pockets, cameras zoomed in, and within seconds, the energy in the stadium shifted. The cheers for the Dodgers became punctuated with murmurs of disbelief. And then, the first boos rang out. Low, hesitant at first, almost shy, but the sound built. Like a wave swelling in the ocean, it grew louder and louder until it was a roar of disapproval. The Royals froze mid-step, eyes scanning the crowd, faces tight with tension. Security personnel immediately tightened their formation, creating a human buffer, but it was clear that no one could contain the reaction for long. Harry, usually so composed in public, visibly stiffened. Meghan's expression flickered, poise cracking ever so slightly, just enough for the cameras to catch. She leaned toward Harry and whispered something inaudible to the crowd, likely a mix of concern and strategy. Every step they took toward their seats drew louder reactions. Fans shouting phrases, waving signs, and even throwing harmless objects, soft foam balls, concession wrappers. Not at them directly, but as a symbolic expression of anger and disbelief. It was a sight that felt surreal, almost cinematic. Royalty in a sports arena, confronted by raw, unfiltered public emotion. But why would thousands of people erupt in such hostility? To understand, you need to consider the context. Harry and Meghan have lived their lives in a spotlight that is both intimate and global. Every move, every word, every appearance is scrutinized, dissected, and shared around the world. The public forms its opinion in real time, and that opinion has, at times, veered into outright judgment. The couple's move to California, their outspoken statements, and their high-profile media projects have painted them as figures who live both in privilege and controversy. So when they appeared at a local sporting event without prior announcement, fans felt as though boundaries had been crossed, social norms violated. For a devoted fan base that sees the stadium as sacred, a place of community, shared excitement, and tradition, the intrusion of two uninvited celebrities felt like a personal affront. The chaos only intensified as they moved further into the stands. Fans in mid-level rows began to join the chorus of boos, some shouting directly at them. Camera phones flashed relentlessly. You could see in Harry's eyes the calculation. How far do we move? When do we react? Meghan, meanwhile, maintained her signature elegance, but her lips pressed into a thin line betrayed irritation, frustration, or perhaps a calculation of the optics. Every fan reaction, the chants, the laughter, the pointed gestures, was absorbed and processed by the couple and their entourage. Security officers, faces tight with tension, were forced to adapt on the fly. Nothing in their training could fully prepare them for a scene where tens of thousands of people simultaneously acted as judge, jury, and spectacle creator. And yet, despite the uproar, some parts of the crowd reacted differently. There were pockets of curiosity, quiet fans who whispered among themselves, some even gesturing toward friends. Look, it's really them. Incredible. Their reactions added a layer of tension. Even amidst rejection, attention persisted. And in today's world, attention is power. Every camera angle, every fan reaction was a story being written in real time, feeding a narrative that would eventually explode online and dominate social media feeds. Within minutes, clips of Harry and Meghan navigating the stadium were circulating on Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram. Every camera angle, every commentary track, Every repost amplified the drama. The stadium, in a sense, had become both stage and theater for a public spectacle the likes of which few had ever seen. But the chaos wasn't purely visual. It was emotional, visceral, and contagious. Stadium vendors recalled later that their ears rang from the sheer volume of the collective disapproval. Fans weren't merely vocal, they were physical in their reactions. Some waved their arms aggressively. Others leaned forward in exaggerated gestures, as if to make sure the royals understood they were not welcome. Every sound and motion was amplified by tens of thousands of people around them, creating a feedback loop of energy, emotion, and tension. The couple, trained and experienced in public appearances, found themselves in unfamiliar territory, an arena where admiration and disdain coexisted in equal, overwhelming measure. And then came the turning point. A fan, emboldened by the energy of the crowd, shouted something that cut through the general noise. The words were sharp, biting, and unmistakable. Cameras caught Harry flinch, Meghan's eyes darted toward the source, and the stadium erupted further. Security personnel, already on high alert, tightened their formation. The couple's steps toward their seats became slower, more deliberate. Every move was calculated, every glance strategic. But the energy of the stadium had shifted irreversibly. What had begun as mild surprise had escalated into a confrontation that no amount of training or experience could fully contain. Amidst this tension, the uninvited appearance revealed deeper truths about celebrity, privilege, and public perception. Here were two individuals accustomed to global attention, confronted not with adoration, but with the raw, unfiltered reactions of ordinary people. And it was humbling, shocking, and dramatic all at once. The fans were not simply booing. They were asserting themselves, reclaiming the space, and redefining the narrative in real time. Every chant, every gesture, every flash of a phone camera contributed to a growing story. A story that would dominate social media, news outlets, and casual conversation for days to come. And yet, just as it seemed the chaos might peak and the couple could retreat into relative safety, something unexpected happened. A group of fans in the upper deck began chanting in unison, creating a sound wave that ricocheted throughout the stadium. The rhythm was infectious. Other fans joined in. The security team, caught in a dilemma, had to make split-second decisions. Harry's composure wavered. Meghan's lips pressed into an almost imperceptible frown, a flicker of disbelief crossing her face. It was in that instant that the full weight of the night's drama became apparent. The stadium was not merely a venue for a sporting event. It had become an arena of confrontation, spectacle, and public accountability. And if you think the story ended there, you would be wrong. Because the drama didn't stop at boos, chants, and viral clips. Somewhere behind the stadium walls, in hidden vantage points, more footage was being captured, footage that would later shock millions around the world. Security cameras caught subtle interactions, glances exchanged, and moments that the public would interpret in ways no one could predict. It was a reminder that in the age of social media, no moment is private, no reaction unseen. And in this high-stakes, uninvited appearance, every gesture, every flinch, every eye roll was immortalized, destined to feed the insatiable appetite for royal drama. By the time Harry and Meghan finally reached their seats, the energy in the stadium was at a fever pitch. Fans were shouting, cameras were flashing, and the couple's presence had irrevocably altered the night's trajectory. This wasn't just a minor incident. It was a cultural event, a collision of celebrity, sports fandom, and public opinion that would be analyzed for weeks. And just as they settled, ready to witness the game in relative safety, a final, unexpected twist awaited. A single moment, captured on video, witnessed by thousands, and later replayed endlessly, would turn an already chaotic scene into an unforgettable spectacle. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. They thought they could control the chaos. They thought the presence of trained security personnel would be enough to protect Prince Harry and Meghan Markle from the storm of boos, chants, and relentless camera flashes. They were wrong. Almost immediately, the stadium became a pressure cooker. Every footstep the royal couple took was monitored, every movement analyzed, not just by the public, but by the security team scrambling to maintain control. What unfolded next was a scene that blurred the line between protocol and pandemonium, where decades of experience met an unprecedented test of human unpredictability. The first challenge came as soon as Harry and Meghan were spotted moving through the concourse toward their seats. Fans surged forward, not aggressively, but with the force of excitement, curiosity, and disbelief. Security personnel had to form protective barriers around the couple, linking arms, adjusting body positions, and even verbally instructing fans to back away. It was a delicate balance. Protect the royals without creating more chaos. Imagine trying to control a stadium full of thousands of people, all armed with smartphones, all acting in unison to document, react, and comment. The moment was surreal, tense, and, most importantly, completely unmanageable by traditional methods. Harry's expression was a mix of vigilance and frustration. Meghan's lips pressed together, eyes scanning the crowd, analyzing every movement, every hand gesture, every subtle shift in posture. It wasn't just about avoiding harm. It was about optics, about image, about perception. Security officers knew that one misstep, one accidental brush with a fan, one misread gesture, could become an international story. But as they moved through the concourse, the challenges escalated. Fans began shouting directly at them. "You don't belong here," one yelled. "Go home," another added, voice echoing through the cavernous stadium. Security had to react instantly, forming tighter formations, redirecting the couple, and even gently blocking overly enthusiastic or aggressive fans. Every movement required precision, discipline, and split-second decision-making. And yet, even with training, there was no playbook for what happened next. Fans started creating pockets of resistance, forming mini crowds that moved independently, ignoring instructions and creating unpredictable pressure points. The stadium was no longer a venue. It was an obstacle course, a living entity reacting to two intruders who were, in essence, royalty among mortals. Then came the first serious incident. A fan, emboldened by the crowd, leaned over a railing to shout directly at Harry. Security reacted instantly, moving to intercept, but in the process, other fans interpreted the intervention as aggression. Phones rose to capture the moment. Video cameras caught every angle. Within minutes, the clip would go viral, framing the incident as a confrontation between fans and royals, even though in reality, it was an intricate dance of protection and misperception. The chaos was magnified not just by the stadium, but by the instant commentary and reinterpretation happening in real time online. Meghan, known for her composure, exhibited subtle signs of tension. Her hands clutched the edges of her handbag tightly. Her eyes flicked to Harry and then to the security personnel. She whispered something inaudible, a combination of instruction and reassurance, and Harry nodded almost imperceptibly. Every gesture was magnified in the spotlight, every glance scrutinized. The stadium itself had become a theater of optics, where perception was just as important as safety. Security personnel faced another challenge: the unpredictability of the fans. Most were not malicious, but their sheer volume created unintentional pressure. The human body can only absorb so much energy, and when tens of thousands of people are reacting emotionally, even trained officers can be overwhelmed. Some fans pushed forward inadvertently, their excitement turning into minor collisions with barriers or officers. Others attempted to take photos too close for comfort, cameras flashing directly into Meghan's eyes, creating both physical and psychological strain. It was a storm of sound, movement, and emotion, and no one was immune. To understand the scale of the challenge, consider this. A typical stadium security plan is designed for predictable threats, rowdy fans, potential altercations, or emergency evacuations. But this was different. This was a perfect storm of celebrity scrutiny, royal protocol, and mass public reaction. There were no protocols for BOOES amplified by thousands of smartphones, for viral moments created in seconds, for a crowd simultaneously documenting and reacting. Security teams had to improvise, creating human corridors, redirecting flows, and constantly recalibrating their positioning. Every step was measured, every glance considered, every response calculated. Yet even the best planning could not anticipate the next surprise. And the surprises came quickly. A group of fans in the upper deck began coordinating chants, turning their collective energy into a wave that rolled through the stands. Security officers tried to anticipate the movement, but the rhythm and timing of the chants created micro moments of unpredictability. Harry instinctively moved closer to Meghan, offering subtle support, his hand lightly touching hers. It was a human moment amid institutional training, a brief instance of connection in a sea of tension. Meghan's response was equally subtle, a nod, a glance, a tightening of her posture. Small gestures that communicated awareness, concern, and control. Meanwhile, the crowd's energy reached a boiling point. Fans began waving objects, not to throw at the couple, but to demonstrate presence, to signal visibility, to assert their opinion. Foam fingers, signs, and even stadium programs became symbolic gestures of dissent. Security personnel had to adjust constantly, raising barriers, blocking sightlines, and preventing potential collisions. The couple's passage through the stadium became less a walk and more a carefully choreographed negotiation with thousands of individuals simultaneously acting in unpredictable ways. Adding to the complexity was the role of the paparazzi. Cameras flashed relentlessly, angles were sought from every possible vantage point, and every click created a narrative that would be replayed endlessly online. The presence of media added a layer of complexity to security decisions. Protect the couple physically, yes, but also manage optics, ensuring that nothing appeared unsafe, threatening, or uncontrolled. One wrong move, one misinterpreted gesture, could instantly become a viral moment, a mistake magnified exponentially by global scrutiny. And yet, amidst the chaos, the royals maintained a sense of direction. Harry led the way, scanning the crowd, adjusting posture, and subtly signaling to security. Meghan followed, aware of the optics, the physical space, and the potential for disruption. It was a delicate balance of human intuition, protocol, and instinct, a dance where missteps could have serious consequences. But the real test came when fans attempted to breach the visual buffer created by security. Someone leaned over a railing, another shouted insults directly, and a wave of chants threatened to drown out everything else. Officers had to intervene physically, creating a ripple of tension that extended through the stadium. The couple's faces, captured in countless videos and photographs, reflected an intense mixture of calm, concern, and strategic poise. Every step forward required careful navigation, not just of physical space, but of psychological pressure. The tension was palpable, a living entity in the stadium. Fans, security, and royals were all participants in a spectacle that had no precedent. The usual power dynamic of royalty, commanding attention, admiration, and respect, was inverted. For once, the audience controlled the environment, dictating reactions, shaping perceptions, and asserting dominance over the narrative. Security teams, trained for high-profile scenarios, found themselves improvising under extraordinary circumstances, adapting minute by minute to a dynamic, volatile, and often unpredictable crowd. And just when it seemed the tension might plateau, something happened that no one could have predicted. A fan in the stands, emboldened by the chaos, raised an object and waved it aggressively, drawing the attention of both the couple and security. The crowd's reaction intensified in a cascade of energy, chanting, shouting, laughing, and pointing all at once. Security had to respond instantly, adjusting formations, redirecting movement, and shielding the couple from the wave of emotion threatening to overwhelm them. It was a moment of pure unpredictability, a live test of coordination, control, and human endurance. By now, the spectacle was more than a simple uninvited appearance. It was a high-stakes drama, played out in real time, witnessed by tens of thousands in the stadium and millions more online. Harry and Meghan were at the center, navigating both physical obstacles and psychological pressures. Every moment was scrutinized, every gesture analyzed, every reaction replayed and dissected. And in the midst of it all, the question hung in the air. How would they emerge from this chaos? Would they retreat, confront, or find a way to navigate the storm without losing composure? As they neared their seats, the tension reached its peak. Security officers, exhausted but focused, had managed to shepherd the couple safely, but only just. The energy of the crowd, amplified by cameras and chants, created a situation that defied conventional protocols. And just when it seemed the immediate danger had passed, a new development arose. A subtle gesture from a fan, unnoticed by most, captured by one vigilant camera operator. That small act would soon become one of the most replayed moments of the night, a detail that would shift the narrative, spark debate, and set the stage for an even more dramatic turn of events. But what happened next inside the stadium would push security to its absolute limits and leave both Harry and Meghan questioning whether they had misjudged the situation entirely. They thought the worst had passed when Harry and Meghan were finally guided to their seats. They thought that the deafening noise, the flashes of phones, and the initial chorus of boos had subsided. But they were wrong, because the fans weren't just observing. They were speaking up, and their voices were louder, sharper, and far more creative than anyone expected. The stadium, which moments ago had been a battlefield of movement and noise, transformed into a stage of vocal rebellion, where ordinary people suddenly became orchestrators of chaos. It began subtly. At first, a few fans in the upper deck shouted phrases like, "Not welcome here," or "Go home." These cries were scattered, almost playful, perhaps testing the waters. But like wildfire, the murmurs spread through the rows, picked up by tens of thousands, amplified by the collective energy of the crowd. Fans leaned over railings, gesturing with their hands, raising arms, waving foam fingers, all while cameras flashed incessantly. It wasn't just a performance, it was a declaration. The public had a voice, and they were using it in full force. Harry's eyes narrowed. Meghan's hand instinctively touched his arm in a brief gesture of solidarity. Both were acutely aware of the power of perception. Every gesture, every glance, every micro-expression could be captured, replayed, and dissected online. And in this moment, fans were not merely reacting. They were performing, asserting their presence, and shaping the narrative in real time. "Do you see this?" Meghan reportedly whispered, voice low but tense, as she scanned the crowd. Harry's reply was a subtle nod, his jaw tight, eyes scanning for the most vocal sections. Some fans didn't just shout. They created chants, rhythmic and repetitive, designed to unsettle and dominate the atmosphere. "We don't want you," echoed from one section, answered by "Go home" from another, forming a call and response that reverberated through the stadium like a wave of controlled chaos. Security personnel found themselves not just protecting the couple physically, but mediating an unprecedented emotional storm. It was no longer enough to form human corridors. The fans' collective voice had created an intangible pressure, one that even the most experienced security officers had never encountered. But it wasn't all anger. A small number of spectators whispered words of intrigue and fascination, a quiet counterpoint to the majority sentiment. Some pointed, others held up phones discreetly, documenting not just the royals, but the crowd's reaction. It created a strange duality, public rejection and voyeuristic fascination coexisting in the same arena. How would Harry and Meghan respond to that subtle mix? Would they feel emboldened, cornered, or something in between? The complexity of human perception became as palpable as the physical chaos surrounding them. The fans' creativity escalated quickly. Signs appeared, some printed professionally, others hastily scrawled on stadium programs. Messages ranged from sarcastic, "Royalty? Really?" to direct and pointed, "This is our stadium, not yours." A chorus of whistles and chants punctuated every movement, every pause, every glance from the royals. Harry's usual calm demeanor was tested. Meghan, ever conscious of optics, leaned slightly forward, lips pressed, eyes scanning for both friendly and threatening faces. The crowd was no longer simply a backdrop. It was an active participant, driving the tension, dictating the narrative. And then, a small group of fans began using a tactic that would later be dubbed synchronized heckling. They coordinated chants, rhythmically clapping in unison, creating a sonic pressure that seemed to ripple through the stadium. Security scrambled, trying to anticipate the next wave, but the fans were improvising, reacting to each other, and amplifying the emotional intensity with every iteration. Harry's eyes flicked to Meghan, a brief exchange that conveyed urgency and unspoken strategy. "They're organized," he likely thought. "More than we expected." Meghan, for her part, responded with poise, but the stress was visible. Her hand subtly adjusted her outfit, a gesture that communicated both composure and preparation for a long, uncomfortable ordeal. She whispered words, possibly strategizing or seeking reassurance, while Harry maintained vigilance, scanning the crowd, signaling imperceptibly to security. Every step, every breath, every micro-expression mattered in that moment, magnified by tens of thousands of spectators and millions more watching online. Social media instantly amplified the scene. Clips of the chants, the signs, and the visual tension between fans and royals went viral within minutes. Analysts dissected reactions, comparing them to previous public appearances and predicting potential fallout. The online world became an extension of the stadium, where hashtags trended, memes were born, and public opinion formed in real time. Fans, now empowered both physically and digitally, were controlling the narrative, and Harry and Meghan were at the center, navigating both the tangible and virtual storm. Amidst all this, a few fans took things further. They began shouting not just phrases, but pointed questions, challenges, and sarcastic remarks aimed directly at the couple. "Do you think this is Hollywood?" one asked. "This isn't a film set," another chimed in. Security moved swiftly to intercept, but the fans' energy, amplified by collective emotion, made containment nearly impossible. Cameras captured every moment, the footage destined to be replayed endlessly online, creating a permanent record of the tension and humiliation. Yet, the fans' behavior wasn't entirely predictable. Some attempted to engage in conversation, shouting questions that were almost rhetorical, designed to elicit a reaction. Others documented subtle reactions from the royals: a glance, a smirk, a twitch of the lips, anything that could be interpreted as acknowledgement or dismissal. It became a live study in human behavior, a performance of emotion and observation that blurred the line between entertainment and confrontation. Then came the crescendo. A fan in the front row, emboldened by the collective energy, leaned forward, shouting directly at Meghan. "You think you belong here?" The words cut through the noise, sharp and unmistakable. Meghan's face tightened, a flicker of irritation crossing her features. Harry's body tensed, protective instincts kicking in. Security moved immediately, forming a tighter formation, while fans cheered, jeered, and documented the confrontation. Cameras caught the moment from multiple angles, each clip destined to amplify the drama, both inside the stadium and across social media platforms. The intensity of the crowd had now reached a point where even seasoned security personnel admitted later that the situation was beyond what they had expected. Fans were not just reacting, they were performing, choreographing, and improvising simultaneously. Every chant, every sign, every flash of a camera created ripples that traveled through the stadium, impacting not just the royals, but everyone in proximity. The energy was contagious, a feedback loop that amplified the spectacle exponentially. As the couple settled into their seats, the fans continued to assert themselves. Boos mixed with chants, signs waved persistently, and the collective voice of the stadium became a tangible force. The situation had evolved from simple, uninvited attendance to a full-blown public spectacle. Harry and Meghan were no longer just participants. They were the focal point, the center of a storm that had been created entirely by public reaction. And just when it seemed the vocal assault might subside, a coordinated shout erupted from multiple sections. The stadium's acoustics amplified the sound, creating a wave that rolled over the couple like a tangible force. Security officers instinctively moved closer, forming a protective barrier, but the energy of the crowd was relentless. Meghan's eyes scanned the stands, lips pressed, as Harry subtly adjusted his posture. Every step, every gesture, every glance mattered. The scene had become a high-stakes performance where the audience controlled the narrative entirely. But what came next would escalate the chaos even further, turning the stadium into a crucible of tension, spectacle, and confrontation, and leaving both Harry and Meghan unsure of how to proceed. She had faced scrutiny before. From tabloid headlines to public criticism, Meghan Markle had learned to navigate the minefield of fame with a combination of poise, strategy, and carefully curated appearances. But nothing, absolutely nothing, could have prepared her for the reaction she received at Dodger Stadium that night. The boos, the chants, the relentless phone cameras, it wasn't just a crowd. It was a living, breathing entity, pulsating with judgment, curiosity, and fury. And in the center of it all, Meghan found herself confronted with a reality she had perhaps underestimated. This was not a PR problem. This was a human problem. The initial wave of noise had already been challenging. Fans shouted, waved signs, and orchestrated chants that reverberated through the stadium like a tidal wave. Security officers flanked her on all sides, attempting to create a protective buffer, but the sheer energy of the crowd made it feel almost like she was walking through a storm. Every step forward was measured, calculated, and meticulously choreographed. Yet even with that care, it felt like she was treading on uncertain ground. Every glance from the crowd, every pointed finger, every shouted insult demanded a response, whether she wanted to acknowledge it or not. Her reaction was subtle at first, a slight tightening of the jaw, a careful adjustment of her posture, the way she clutched the edge of her handbag a fraction tighter than usual. These micro-movements, almost imperceptible to the casual observer, communicated a controlled but undeniable tension. Harry, walking just a step ahead, caught her subtle cues and offered silent reassurance with a nod or a brief touch. In that instant, their partnership was evident, not in grand gestures or public displays of affection, but in the quiet, almost invisible communication that conveyed unity amid chaos. Meghan's eyes darted constantly, scanning for patterns, threats, and opportunities. She had to process dozens of inputs at once. The chants from the fans, the flashing cameras, the commentary from those seated nearby, and the subtle signals from security. Every second demanded focus, attention, and rapid decision-making. For someone accustomed to the spotlight, this was familiar territory, but amplified exponentially. She had to think not just about her immediate physical safety, but about optics, perception, and the potential viral impact of every reaction. And yet, even as she maintained poise, her frustration was evident. There were moments when the crowd's energy overwhelmed her usual calm. A chant, particularly pointed and sarcastic, elicited a sharp inhale, a barely perceptible tightening of the lips, a shift in posture. Meghan was processing not just the noise, but the intent behind it. Fans weren't simply reacting. They were strategizing in real time, challenging her presence, testing her composure. It was a confrontation she could not avoid, and for the first time in weeks, perhaps months, she felt the raw weight of public opinion pressing in on her. Security personnel recognized the subtle signs immediately. They adjusted formations, tightened protective barriers, and moved slightly ahead, anticipating potential disruptions. Meghan responded by subtly repositioning herself, leaning slightly toward Harry, as if seeking both guidance and support. This small gesture, a whisper of human vulnerability amidst public spectacle, highlighted a critical reality. Even the most experienced public figures can be human, even when trained to appear unflappable. The crowd, sensing even the slightest shift, responded with renewed energy. Boos, chants, and laughter intensified, creating a rhythm of sound that Meghan had to interpret and respond to almost instinctively. She had to decide when to maintain composure, when to acknowledge, and when to project calm authority. Every micro-decision could have massive consequences, magnified by thousands of cameras and the inevitable social media amplification. It was a performance in every sense of the word. Only the audience wasn't passive. They were active participants, co-creating the drama with every gesture and every vocalization. Meghan's reaction was also strategic. She occasionally raised a hand in a subtle wave, not to appease, but to assert presence. A tilt of her head, a measured smile, a glance toward the camera. These small but deliberate gestures communicated control, even in the face of chaos. They were signals to Harry, to security, and, crucially, to the world watching online. She was aware, she was present, and she would not crumble under pressure. Yet beneath this composed exterior, there was undeniable tension, a mixture of frustration, resolve, and anticipation of what might happen next. And then, a particularly vocal section of fans intensified their efforts. Shouts became pointed questions. Do you think you belong here? Are you lost? Why are you in our stadium? Meghan's eyes narrowed slightly, scanning the crowd, calculating how best to respond, or whether to respond at all. In these moments, she had to balance optics, safety, and emotional intelligence. A single misstep could be captured and shared, interpreted in countless ways, and become a viral talking point. The pressure was immense, and the stakes were global. At one point, Meghan leaned toward Harry, whispering something urgently. Perhaps it was a suggestion to adjust their route. Perhaps it was an acknowledgement of the chaos. Or perhaps it was a strategy for maintaining composure. Harry responded with a nod, and the two continued moving, navigating the stadium with precision. Every step was a negotiation between presence, perception, and safety. For Meghan, this was not just a walk through a stadium. It was a test of public fortitude, a live examination of her ability to maintain control in the most intense, unpredictable environment imaginable. Even the small gestures of fans had enormous psychological impact. Someone waving a sign with a sarcastic message, a chant echoing from the upper deck, a camera flash reflecting across her eyes. All these inputs had to be processed instantaneously. Meghan's ability to remain composed, project confidence, and manage both her and Harry's safety under these conditions demonstrated remarkable emotional intelligence, adaptability, and awareness. It was a performance, yes, but it was also survival. At the same time, Meghan's reactions revealed subtle cracks in the veneer of composure. A brief narrowing of the eyes, a tightening of the jaw, a shift in stance. These micro-expressions were captured by cameras and would later be analyzed and dissected online. Fans and commentators would debate whether she had been rattled, frustrated, or calculating. But in reality, it was all of these things simultaneously: human, instinctive, and strategic. She was processing thousands of stimuli while projecting an image of poise, a balancing act that few could sustain for long under such pressure. And then came the unexpected. A fan, emboldened by the energy of those around them, shouted a particularly cutting remark. Meghan's reaction was immediate, yet subtle: a brief pause, a tightening of her grip on her handbag, and a glance that carried both acknowledgement and challenge. Security instinctively moved closer, forming a tighter barrier. The stadium, already a cauldron of energy, seemed to respond to this small interaction, as if the entire space had synchronized itself around her reaction. Every camera captured the moment. Every social media platform amplified it. It was a microdrama that became macro, an emblematic instance of the tension, the scrutiny, and the public judgment surrounding Meghan Markle. Despite the pressure, Meghan did not retreat. She continued to scan, adjust, and respond. Every gesture, however small, was meaningful: a hand subtly raised, a nod, a measured smile. These were signals of control, authority, and awareness, designed to communicate that she remained unbroken in the face of overwhelming attention. Yet beneath the surface, the stress was palpable. It was the kind of tension that could be seen only in micro-expressions: the fleeting tightening of lips, the subtle narrowing of eyes, the brief inhale that signals alertness and calculation. Fans, sensing the subtle shifts, intensified their reactions. More chants, more boos, more waves of sound created an almost physical pressure. It was as though the stadium itself had become an active participant in a psychological game, pressing, probing, testing the boundaries of composure. Meghan, fully aware of the stakes, continued to respond with strategic poise. She was not only defending herself, she was defending Harry, the optics, and the narrative that would soon dominate headlines. Every movement was deliberate, calculated, and amplified by cameras, smartphones, and social media. And just when it seemed she had weathered the storm, a coordinated shout erupted from multiple sections of the stadium. The volume, rhythm, and intensity created a sonic wave that reverberated throughout the arena. Meghan instinctively adjusted her posture, leaned subtly toward Harry, and whispered a rapid assessment of the situation. The energy of the crowd was relentless. Security officers tightened formations, anticipating potential escalation. Cameras captured every movement. The stage was set for the next act in a drama that was only intensifying, a spectacle that would be dissected, analyzed, and replayed for months to come. But what Meghan did next, her move in response to this coordinated effort, would shock even the most seasoned observers. It was a subtle, almost imperceptible action, yet it had immediate consequences. Every fan reaction, every security adjustment, and every camera angle captured the moment, solidifying it as a pivotal turning point in a night defined by chaos, confrontation, and public scrutiny. And in that instant, it became clear Meghan Markle was not just reacting. She was performing, calculating, surviving, and commanding attention, all in a stadium filled with thousands of unpredictable fans, cameras, and energy that could erupt at any moment. But the moment of her reaction would not be the end, because what happened immediately after? The escalation that followed would push both her and Harry to the edge of composure, leaving the stadium, security, and the world watching in complete disbelief. Prince Harry had faced his share of public scrutiny over the years, from tabloid headlines to intrusive paparazzi and even fan criticism. But nothing quite prepared him for the scene unfolding at Dodger Stadium. He was no stranger to the public eye, no stranger to tension, and no stranger to navigating complex, high-pressure environments. Yet this deafening roar of boos, chants, and flashes was different. The stadium wasn't just a backdrop, it was a battlefield, and Harry was on the front lines, tasked with navigating not only the physical challenges of the crowd, but also the psychological complexities of fame, perception, and family reputation. The moment Harry became aware of the intensity of the crowd's response, his body reacted instinctively. His shoulders squared, jaw tightened, and eyes scanned the audience with rapid precision. Every chant, every raised sign, every camera flash was input data, something to be read, interpreted, and responded to in real time. Security personnel flanked him, their presence providing some reassurance. Yet even they could not eliminate the unpredictable energy of tens of thousands of people united in vocalized judgment. This was more than an uninvited appearance gone awry. It was a test of composure, patience, and strategic thinking under extraordinary pressure. Harry's initial reaction was restraint. He understood the optics of any overt response. Anything too aggressive could be captured, replayed, and amplified across social media. He had learned from prior experiences that even a subtle gesture, an eye roll, a short exhale, a slight tilt of the head, could be interpreted in countless ways. Yet beneath that restraint was a simmering tension, a need to protect not just himself, but Meghan, and to navigate the chaos without causing further escalation. Every step they took toward their seats required precise calculation. Every glance at a chanting fan, every subtle repositioning in response to a wave of the crowd, was part of a choreography designed to preserve dignity and safety simultaneously. And yet, as the chants grew louder, the boos intensified, and the energy of the stadium became almost palpable, Harry's patience began to be tested. A section of the audience, emboldened by the collective momentum, started directing personal insults. "You don't belong here. This isn't your world. Go back to where you came from." The words weren't just audible. They were physical in their impact, striking at Harry in waves of public scrutiny, judgment, and disapproval. Security reacted immediately, forming tighter protective buffers and redirecting the couple's movement. But the psychological weight of thousands of voices attacking simultaneously was impossible to ignore. Harry's mind was a rapid-fire engine of strategy. Should he acknowledge the crowd? Ignore them? Attempt to communicate control through body language? Each option carried risk. Acknowledgement could be perceived as weakness. Ignoring could escalate tensions. Defensive gestures could be construed as aggression. And while he weighed these possibilities, Meghan's subtle cues guided his decisions. Slight gestures, whispered observations, and micro-moments of reassurance that reminded him they were navigating this spectacle together. Their partnership, forged under scrutiny and challenge, became an essential tool in this high-stakes environment. In response to a particularly aggressive chant from the upper deck, Harry made a calculated move. He slightly lifted his hand, not in greeting, not in surrender, but as a subtle acknowledgement of the situation, a measured gesture designed to communicate awareness without inciting escalation. The crowd, sensing the movement, responded with an immediate spike in energy. Some interpreted the gesture as calm authority, others as a sign of tension. Security personnel, reading the subtle shifts in both the crowd and Harry's body language, adjusted their formations. The moment was fleeting, yet captured by dozens of cameras, destined to be dissected and analyzed online in the hours, days, and weeks that followed. Harry's next response was equally measured, balancing assertiveness with restraint. He adjusted his posture, subtly leading Meghan toward their seats while scanning the crowd for potential threats. His eyes flicked from section to section, noting enthusiastic individuals, vocal challengers, and photographers angling for the perfect shot. Every micro-decision, how fast to walk, which direction to pivot, how to hold his shoulders, was calculated to preserve safety and optics simultaneously. Security officers described later that he was operating almost instinctively, relying on experience, intuition, and a keen understanding of public perception to navigate a volatile environment. The psychological stakes were immense. Harry wasn't just protecting himself and Meghan. He was navigating the optics of millions of viewers watching online, analyzing body language, and interpreting reactions in real time. Every movement had consequences beyond the stadium. A simple flinch could become a viral moment. A subtle smile could be misread as arrogance. And while he maintained composure, the tension beneath the surface was undeniable. He felt the weight of expectation, the pressure of scrutiny, and the need to protect both himself and his partner from an increasingly unpredictable situation. Then came the first personal confrontation. A fan leaned over a railing, shouting a direct insult toward Harry. Security moved to intercept, but in that split second, Harry reacted on instinct. He shifted his body slightly, a subtle, controlled defensive maneuver, while maintaining eye contact with the crowd. The movement was enough to communicate awareness and control without aggression. Meghan, observing the gesture, nodded subtly, signaling that she understood the move and its purpose. It was a brief, almost invisible communication, but it revealed the intense coordination required to navigate such a hostile environment. The crowd, sensing the subtle adjustment, responded with renewed vigor. Chants intensified, alternating between boos and coordinated phrases designed to provoke reaction. The energy of the stadium became almost tactile, pressing in from every angle. Security personnel described it as a living entity, fans moving and reacting as a single organism, their collective energy dictating the pace and flow of the royals' movement. Harry's ability to remain calm under pressure was tested to its limit. He adjusted his pace, his posture, and his gaze, all while calculating potential outcomes for every gesture. Social media amplified every moment. Clips of Harry's subtle defensive gestures, his controlled responses, and his strategic movements circulated instantly. Fans online dissected every frame, debated interpretations, and speculated about his emotional state. The stadium's energy had now transcended physical space, spilling into the digital realm where analysis, judgment, and speculation intensified the drama. Harry's responses, though measured, became symbolic, a representation of restraint under relentless public scrutiny. At one point, Harry attempted a brief acknowledgement of the crowd, lifting a hand in a controlled, minimal gesture. It was enough to communicate awareness, but not enough to appease. The fans responded with an immediate crescendo of noise, escalating chants, and coordinated movements that filled the stadium. Security adjusted instantaneously, guiding the couple with precision while ensuring that no physical confrontation occurred. Every step forward became a negotiation, a balancing act between control, perception, and safety. Harry's response was also emotionally intelligent. He understood the psychological dynamics at play, not just the immediate tension, but the broader narrative. This was more than a crowd reacting to an uninvited appearance. It was a performance of collective judgment, a challenge to celebrity authority, and a moment where the public asserted its influence over perception. Every movement, every glance, and every microgesture communicated both resilience and calculation. And then came the unexpected twist. A coordinated shout erupted from multiple sections, a wave of sound that rolled over Harry like a tangible force. His eyes flicked toward the source, body tensing instinctively. Meghan, sensing his reaction, leaned in, whispering a rapid assessment. Security tightened formations, cameras captured every motion, and the stadium seemed to pulse with anticipation. Harry's response in that moment would be analyzed endlessly. A subtle shift in posture, a measured glance, a controlled exhale that communicated both awareness and resilience. The intensity of the crowd did not abate. Fans continued to chant, jeer, and document every microreaction. Each action, though seemingly minor, was magnified by thousands of observers, both in the stadium and online. Harry's ability to navigate this chaos relied not just on physical presence, but psychological acuity, reading the crowd, anticipating movements, and responding with precision. It was a performance in every sense of the word, yet it was grounded in instinct, training, and an acute understanding of human behavior. And just when it seemed that Harry had successfully navigated one wave of chaos, another unexpected development occurred. A group of fans, emboldened by the collective energy, began coordinating chants from multiple sections simultaneously, creating a sonic wave that reverberated through the stadium. Security personnel adjusted positions instantly, while Harry subtly repositioned himself, signaling Meghan to follow. The tension reached a new peak as the stadium itself seemed to take on a life of its own. Every fan reaction, every chant, every camera flash contributed to a growing spectacle that had no precedent. But what happened next? Harry's decisive move in response to this orchestrated surge would shift the balance entirely. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, yet it had immediate consequences for the royals, security, and the fans. And in that moment, it became clear this was no longer just an uninvited appearance. It had become a test of composure, strategy, and resilience. A high-stakes performance where every action would be analyzed, dissected, and replayed for the world to see. Within minutes of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's uninvited appearance at Dodger Stadium, the digital world erupted. Social media, the ever-watchful eye of public perception, became a second stadium, one that amplified every reaction, every gesture, and every gasp from the crowd in real time. It was no longer just a baseball game. It had become a viral spectacle, and millions of people worldwide were tuning in to witness the unfolding chaos, dissecting each frame, and forming opinions before the night was even over. The first clip went viral almost instantly. A fan in the upper deck, recording on a smartphone, captured Harry and Meghan walking through a sea of chanting fans. The video showed Meghan adjusting her posture, Harry scanning the crowd with tension etched across his face, and the stadium responding with boos and coordinated chants. Within minutes, it was reposted across platforms: Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook. Influencers and fan accounts amplified the footage, adding commentary, reaction shots, and hashtags like #DodgersRoyals, #BooedInLA, and #UninvitedRoyal. The speed of dissemination was unprecedented, transforming a local event into an international phenomenon. The viral nature of the clip created a feedback loop. Fans in the stadium, noticing themselves captured on camera, reacted even more intensely. Their chants grew louder, signs waved higher, and coordinated gestures multiplied. Security teams were now navigating not just the physical space, but the psychological space.